I mean, we obviously care a lot about Hong Kong. We've been there for the protest movement, so it's good to get back into this. But so, all right. So here's my question for you: since you advise people on investing in Hong Kong and mainland China, why not be in Hong Kong? You're originally from mainland China.
Well, Hong Kong has always been such an important part of modern China culture and business. When I was a kid growing up in Beijing, Hong Kong was by far the trendsetter for the greater China business or cultural circles. The music, the movies, the TV shows, and relating to the TV shows, a lot of the court dramas. It was one of the major early inspiration for me to become a lawyer or eventually business person. And of course, part of what happened in Hong Kong is nobody's fault. Hong Kong's economy was maybe 25, 30% of the Greater China GDP back in the early 90s. And now, of course, it's naturally down to something like 2%. It's a fraction of the GDP of a Guangdong province, probably.
But that's not because Hong Kong declined. It's more because other cities like Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Shanghai.
Right, part of that is nobody's fault. Not because Hong Kong declined, not because Hong Kong lost its civil society or modern rule of law, but more to do with China getting rich the past 20 to 30 years.
But so is there a reason you are not based in Hong Kong?
Well, I moved myself and my family sort of back to the U.S. I'm a U.S. lawyer. I'm a California lawyer. Came to law school in the U.S. More than 20 years ago. And before that, I also did most of my college in the U.S. We all had a great career back in Asia. I did 15 years of venture capital private equity deals as a lawyer, essentially porting international, but mostly U.S. capital technology and probably more importantly, human relations to the China tech industry. That kind of what I call the Gilded Age of China tech is clearly coming to an end now, if not already. At the same time, a lot of my clients need things to do overseas, in particular in the U.S. So for me, that's in terms of business, is a natural process of just following your clients.
Well, the economic landscape of China and Hong Kong has changed a lot in the past couple of years. I think we can talk about some of the anti-espionage laws that have come out. But the main thing I want to know is right now is how did the national security law in Hong Kong affect you and your business?
Are we talking about the National Security Law 1.0, which came out in middle of 2020, or the one that's just been announced under the 30-day consultation now?
Well, we are going to get to that. But so, yeah, run us through how the initial things change and how does it changing over time? Because there's also talk of Article 23 coming out, which we'll get to that.
That is what you're referring to, Article 23, the 30-day consultation, right? But let's start with the 2020 National Security Law.
Yeah, clearly a lot of things changed after the 2020 National Security Law came out, which probably targets more of the political activists, the pro-human rights, pro-democracy people. If you recall, first of all, that law came out from China. It was imposed by Beijing. It was, in terms of legal technicality, the law was created in the form of a amendment to the basic law, the mini constitution in Hong Kong. So the nature of that legislation is very different than the current one. After that, of course, that scared a lot of people, a lot of the business people. When I was in law school in California 20 years ago, out of the blue, many of the senior lawyer mentors would tell me that, hey, you are bilingual, bicultural, you're from China. If you go back to China now, we're talking about early 2000s, you have a great future. And just more specifically, if you go work at a large company or large law firm in Shanghai or Hong Kong, the training, the credentials will be no different than if you work at a similar type of company in New York or London. And of course, they were absolutely right. So pretty soon after I graduated and qualified as a lawyer in California, I worked for 1 year in the US. Although initially I just wanted to be an intellectual property lawyer in California, but then pretty quickly I followed that kind of advice and went back to work in China. And then, of course, you start to do business in Beijing, Shanghai, and a lot of the mainland China background returnees like me at some point became Hong Kong citizens, and Hong Kong became our home. But that was the 20 years ago. I'm not sure. I'm really curious how many senior lawyers or business leaders are giving young people the same kind of advice these days, and in part because of the national security law.
Well, sort of what specific aspects of the national security law are making lawyers less interested in practicing law in Hong Kong?
Sure. Part of that shows the legislative process in Hong Kong, is no longer up to the normal standard of any mature Western democracy. It was not just national security law, but also what triggered it, which was the 2019 extradition bill. There are a lot of pretty dire implications, and we actually see so many people who are mainstream lawyers, mainstream business leaders, getting into trouble for colluding with alleged collusion with foreign powers for somehow endangering national security, for somehow being suspicious of having seditious intent. And if you just look at the numbers, there are thousands and thousands of political prisoners in Hong Kong. Not all of them convicted. Many of them are still going through excruciating judicial process, and it doesn't look like they are able to find impartial judges, or they are free to retain their own lawyers of choice to defend them. So all this for a pretty long time. On the other hand, I guess it's fair to say that the many aspects of the business community didn't feel that threatened just yet, because that what I call national security law 1.0 generally targets local pro-democracy activists. But the writing is on the wall. Hong Kong is still a place where you can use Google products and look at international news. Well, there are some things that have become inconvenient. Some of the episodes of TV shows cannot be shown in Hong Kong on Amazon or Disney, and ChatGPT cannot be used in Hong Kong for some reasons. So all this together, it's just made the business environment pretty uncomfortable. But having said that, probably the larger reason for a lot of the expats or companies shrinking their presence in Hong Kong, that probably has more to do with the economic downturn in China, which started probably more than a year ago.
So the economic situation in mainland China is having a bigger impact than the national security law on foreign investors in Hong Kong.
I believe so. I believe it's fair to say. Having said that, if you look at what's happening in the draft National Security Law 2.0 based on Article 23 of the Hong Kong Basic Law, that probably more directly affects the foreign business people.
So tell us about that. Yeah.
Sure. Well, if you look at the 2020 law, it talks about collusion with the foreign powers or foreign forces. That's clearly is talking about the locals doing something that the government doesn't like. But the new one talks about foreign interference directly. So we will be looking at foreign investors, foreign analysts of international banks, for example. If they say something, for example, about Hong Kong US dollar, Hong Kong dollar peg policy, that could be foreign interference that has some sort of national security implications. And other than national security, the new law also very vaguely and broadly talks about, I'm looking at my notes here, there's a long list: treason, insurrection, sabotage, foreign interference, we talk about that, state secret espionage. And I'm not saying that other countries don't have these kind of laws. American and many other Western countries have laws about treason, insurrection, and so forth. But like I mentioned earlier, that kind of laws in a modern liberal democracy, you need to go through some pretty long legislative process and debates, and and that kind of scrutiny before the law come into effect. And Hong Kong clearly is not going to be the case. We'll see. It's going to happen in just about 4 weeks.